Hello. Okay. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my live stream. If you guys can give me a test on just how the audio and the video is showing up for you guys, hopefully it's showing up okay. Yeah, welcome. Welcome to my 20,000 subscribers plus celebration, I guess, live stream. So I'm really excited because I think it was about like 2 weeks ago, I hit 20,000 subscribers and like I was going to make this Q&A video and do a live stream and like celebrate it, but I'm already at like 22,000. No, was it 22,200 already? Are you kidding me? And one of my videos, my apartment gardening video, is like hit over 100,000 views in like what, 2 days or something like that. So I'm like riding a high of like YouTube success right now. I know there's so many more people who are like at 100,000 or whatever, but I'm stoked that like my channel is where it is, and like that just, especially for you guys who have been around since I had like 1,000 or less subscribers, it's just like really exciting to see people excited about wildlife biology and environmental science. And so I'm just really grateful to have that. Yeah, it looks like you guys are saying that the audio and the video is good. So I'm going to be answering some questions about, I kind of like left it open. Environmental science, wildlife biology, just really general type of stuff. I asked the question already a few weeks ago, actually, or no, 1 week ago on my, no, 2 weeks ago on my wildlife community page on YouTube. So I have 29 questions already from a lot of you guys. So I'm going to answer some of those, and also I'm going to be answering them in the chat as well too. I'll do the best that I can. It's going to depend on how many people are in here. Thank you, Dolce, for the congrats. Ara, mid 2019 subscriber and Discord regular. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the good jobs and great jobs. That's awesome. Yeah, so if you guys have questions around really anything in the realm of environmental science and wildlife biology, ask them in the chat. And I'm going to start by answering some of the questions from the community tab because there's some really good ones in there. I actually haven't like looked through them too much, so I'm just going to kind of pick some randomly here. So someone asked me my favorite national park in the US and in Canada. So my favorite, oh, that's a really hard question. I love our national parks in North America. I'm thinking there's so many neat ones, but I have to say that some of the California mountain parks have to be my favorite. Yosemite National Park's beautiful. Everywhere around like Sequoia, I think Sequoia's a national park. There's a bunch of national forests in there too. Sequoia is really pretty. Kings Canyon's really pretty. The California mountain parks are the best. And in Canada, I would say probably Jasper National Park. Jasper National Park is beautiful. Wood Buffalo, I think that's a national park. In northern Alberta is also really pretty. Oh my gosh, I'm getting a bunch of questions coming. Here since 10,000 subs. Thank you and welcome. 10,000 subs was actually not that long ago, which is amazing. It was only 8 months ago because I wanted to hit 10,000 subs by the end of 2000. What year was it last year? God, 2019. And I hit it like, I think like within the first week of 2020. So that wasn't even that long ago. And now like, I don't know, I'm getting so close to 30,000 already, which is insane. Okay, I'm going to answer another one from the community tab, then I'll pick one from the chat. So, there's so many in here. Okay. What made you decide to choose wildlife biology all over? What made you choose to decide? Oh my God, you guys, what made you decide to choose wildlife biology over all of the other environmentally related degrees? I'm trying to figure out which degree to specialize in from Jura. So I actually didn't major in wildlife biology. I majored in ecology. And the reason why I chose ecology was actually I was studying microbiology. And so I knew I kind of like wanted to do something in biology, but I ended up actually really liking my ecology coursework. There was a lot of other stuff. It was like a combination of like, I had to take ecology for a microbiology degree and I loved my ecology class. And then also I wanted to do some volunteer internship work. And so then I went to Bolivia and I worked with rescued mountain lions down there. And that like far and away made me decide to do wildlife specifically. So that's why I got into wildlife. Like once I saw conservation projects hands on, that pretty much made me decide that that was like what I wanted to do growing up. 1966 Repti dude. You've been here since hashtag vegan below zero. Yes, I know. That's like old school now. Ara asks, where is the most beautiful place that your job has taken you? That's such a good question. There's so many beautiful places, but for some reason that's coming out of the top of my head. I've like worked in a lot of countries, but working in around Banff National Park in the Canadian Rockies is so beautiful. Like that has to be one of the most picturesquely beautiful landscapes that I've ever worked in. It is like, if you think of, okay, actually no, if you see a picture like in your dentist's office of like a mountain range, like just some like gorgeous mountain range, it's probably like Moraine Lake around Lake Louise or like somewhere in the Canadian Rockies, because it is the most picturesque place I've ever seen in my entire life. So if you ever get a chance to go there outside of COVID, of course, then definitely check it out. It is beautiful. And do some backpacking if you go to the Canadian Rockies, because a lot of people don't leave like the town site, and you got to get out there backpacking or hiking or camping. You got to get out into the wilderness and actually like away from the people. And that's the most beautiful spots. And there's even, I know I'm getting off topic here, but there's even like wilderness huts you can go to, and you can rent them for like $30 a night, and you hike into the hut and you have like a cabin that you can spend the night at. And I do that. I actually have a vlog where I did that in my Day in the Life of a Biologist Canadian Rockies edition with my friend Kayla. We stayed at one of those huts and it's incredible. Ara, that's like 3 questions. I just picked the first one I saw. Hold on guys, let her breathe. Are there ecology jobs in cities such as Toronto or Ottawa? That's a really good question. There totally is. So I always kind of think how lucky we are to be in like a field where you can find environmental and wildlife type of jobs in rural and urban places, because there's a lot of like jobs where you actually can't find work like outside of an urban center. I know, like for example, people do like computer science. Sometimes they'll struggle to find like stuff in small towns if they're not working remote. So we can find stuff there because a lot of consulting companies and nonprofits are actually headquartered in big cities, like especially around like Toronto. You know, if you're in Los Angeles, New York, they have headquarters for so many companies that hire biologists out of their headquarters and just send them out to field sites wherever they work. And also governments, if you work as a government biologist, a lot of times you'll work out of like their headquarters or something like that. So yeah, you can definitely find work in cities. I don't live in a city. I wouldn't say. I live in like a large town. I think it's like 100,000 people where I live or something like that. But we do have like a bunch of like capital buildings because it's capital of BC. So there are like a lot of environmental opportunities here as well. And especially in cities that have like politically like a strong environmental component to them. Like I'm thinking like California has all those environmental laws. So like, you know, Sacramento is like a great city for if you want to work in government wildlife biology kind of thing. Oh, hey, I'm doing a coursework-based wildlife master's, did my undergrad in India. I don't have as much experience as I'd like. Will I be overqualified for tech jobs or internships? I would try to do internships as soon. I mean, I know it makes it hard because you say you graduate December, so you probably won't be able to get an internship before you graduate. But like the sooner you can get internships, the better, because they either prioritize people who are already still in school or like really fresh new graduates. So internships can be hard to get after you're out of school for a little bit. So those would definitely be like, if you can't get a tech job, try to get an internship as soon as possible. Tech jobs, you won't be overqualified for having a master's and an undergrad. A lot of tech jobs, honestly, that's probably like the most common demographic I see like tech jobs go to is like new grads with like their master's or their bachelor's degree. So no, I wouldn't worry about being underqualified for that, or overqualified, I mean. Can I be a wildlife biologist in the UK? Yes. I would check out Future Ecologist, who's going to school right now to be an ecologist. Her channel is based out of the UK, and she has a bit more UK specific experiences of what it's like to go to school in that field there. Um, Is it hard to transition from field work to office work? Leon asks. Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. It can be really hard because field work is totally different, like the day to day to office work. And whether that's like going to 100% office job or just like spending some time in the office after you're out of the field, it can be hard to like wrap your brain around like professionalism again because sometimes when you're in the field, like professionalism goes out the window, right? Like you're not like dressed up going to meetings or anything like that. So it definitely can be like a bit of an adjustment going back into the office and not like cursing all the time and like, you know, just talking too openly. I definitely like always struggle with that. Also, just like it's nice being home all the time, but when you're used to like traveling around for the field, sometimes it can just feel boring in the office. Like everyone's different, but okay, I'm gonna answer one from the community tab here. What do you think you'll be doing in 3 to 5 years? Do you think your job will be more exciting than before? I That's hard to say. So I've reached like a really good point in my job where I'm like quite happy where I am. And I actually had to do a performance review with my boss, and she was like, "Oh, where do you see yourself in like 3 to 5 years?" And I didn't want to say like kind of where I am right now, because you're always supposed to be like, "Oh no, I want to be like a manager, a supervisor." But yeah, I'm just really happy where I am right now. So I kind of want to stay here. Hopefully, like, I'll at least be, you know, doing the more interesting side of what I do now. So I'd love to do like a little bit more field work than I do now. But generally, like, I don't think it's going to be too much different in 3 to 5 years. But who knows, right? Like 3 to 5 years ago, I was in a totally different life situation. So things can totally change. How did you start working in oil and gas? Looking to do the same to pay off school debt. I moved to an oil and gas focused city, Calgary, Alberta, and like everything was oil and gas there. So it wasn't really even a choice. It was like that was all the work. So definitely like starting out looking at environmental consulting companies and resource companies. I never worked directly for oil and gas companies. I always worked through like consulting, which I preferred. I think it was a little bit of a different experience than if I had worked directly for an oil and gas company. Like consulting is a little bit removed, which I preferred. Start looking at the big consulting companies and try to look for like biological technician positions, or like environmental planning if you're more interested in the office side of things. And that's like probably my best suggestion. Um, Did you struggle with housing after you graduated? I got lucky where I got a position eventually that was based out of one city. And so I didn't have to do the whole thing that a lot of people do of like doing like a million different seasonal jobs and moving all over the country for them. I did a bit of that in school, but I was based mostly out of one spot. So I was able to keep like just a regular apartment. And then I traveled out from that headquartered spot. So they would put me up in a hotel and everything, which was pretty nice. So I didn't struggle too much with housing until I came to Vancouver Island. It's really hard to find housing here. So now I'm struggling. What percent of your workday is spent in the field now that you do more office stuff? Dandy asks. It's not even so much like it's okay, that's kind of hard to say. So when I think of my work day, there's like almost never a day where I spend 25% of the day in the field and then 75% in the office. It's never really split up like that because my field sites are so like when I work in the field, it's so far away. So I'm usually traveling, like, and that's been the case with all the jobs that I've worked. I've had to like take a plane to my field site. So I'll generally go out like in my last few jobs for like a week to 3 weeks, and then be home for like another few months. So it's better to look at it like over the whole year, maybe like 15% of my year is in the field. I would say that it might even be closer to 10. My last job, I definitely was closer to 80% of my year was in the field. And then the year before that, 100%. No, not 100%, like 95% of my year was in the field. So it totally depends. Everyone's different though. When I worked for a municipal government, I did actually spend like one day in the field and then like be back in the office the next day because all my sites were like within a short driving distance. So that was a little different. Do you recommend Zooniverse for stuff? Yeah, I actually use Zooniverse a lot on some of my live streams. It's fun. It's a good way to get experience with camera traps. What are your thoughts on COVID affecting school and making a lot of people go online? The classroom, I feel, is the best place to learn, but online is what's cheaper and available. Yeah, like everyone is online right now. It can be hard, especially for lab courses. I don't know if you're in high school or university, but if you're in university, it's like the lab courses, it really helps to try to get them in person. But it's not the end of the world. Like everyone's in the same situation, and the teachers are probably going to have some like interactive ways to get around that for lab coursework. And for classroom coursework, I mean, it's up to your own personal like learning ability. I mean, I didn't actually get too much more from my lecture courses actually sitting in the room versus I think if I had been on a Zoom call, because I was in huge lecture courses anyway that had like 300 people. So it's not like I could ask the professor questions, but I think like a lot of people are going to lose that like professor and student interaction, which is really unfortunate. So hopefully they're offering like some sort of office hours so you can talk to your professors and some of your classmates outside of like the lecture hours. I'm going to answer one from the community tab here. What advice would you give to your younger self and why? That's always like a hard one, huh? I think I would tell my younger self to relax because I was always so worried about like my career and like what was going to happen next and looking in the forward into the future. And I know it's like, that's totally like a place of privilege that I'm at now with a permanent job, but I didn't enjoy the life of like temporary work enough. I was always just like, I need to get a permanent job. I always like was worried about where my next job was going to come from. Even though I had like good savings, I would just like tell myself, even if it's hard, like to just try to enjoy it while you can. Because one day you're probably going to be, 30 years from now, have a bunch of kids and a mortgage and stuck in a house all year and like remember fondly your years where you're traveling the world without a care in the world, if that's even your situation. I don't know. That's what I would tell myself, is just like enjoy the moment more and like be more in the present. Even though like things can feel tough, like, I don't know. I feel like I lost so much time worrying, even during the best months of my life, looking back, I was always just worried about what I was going to do next and thinking forward. So you're taking notes. Environmental scientist here. Lost my position due to COVID, but I want to be more in the wildlife science areas. Hopefully I can get a job out west somewhere in wildlife bio as a biotech. Yeah, it sounds like a good plan. Especially if you're an environmental scientist now, I think it's like a pretty good way to transition into wildlife work, especially if you like have ever like been exposed to it a bit. Like when I was working as an environmental scientist, which was like one of my first jobs, wasn't specifically biology, I was able to get on with like the wildlife teams going out, and I already had some idea of like environmental science work, so it translated really well to wildlife biology. So yeah, usually a lot of the experience is actually quite transferable. They just want to make sure that you know like your species. So I know you're not asking for advice in this question, but if you want to work out west, like starting to learn your species ID now could be super helpful for jobs. You're still doing lab at school right now. Yeah, some of the lectures are online though. Are you doing in-person labs? That surprises me. I guess it's like your lab group's usually pretty small, hey? Was it easy to transition from unpaid internships to entry-level wildlife jobs? It can be pretty hard. It can be pretty hard both in terms of actually getting the job and like your day-to-day life changing a little bit. Because when you're an unpaid intern, it's okay. I mean, it's always okay to make mistakes, but you definitely are like, your hands are held a little bit more. And I found like just working on my self-confidence when I moved to be like a paid position, because your expectations are higher and employers expect you to be bringing some knowledge to the table, and that can be really stressful, and like there can be a lot of like imposter syndrome associated with that, and just like concern about your ability. But generally, like if you're asking questions, you're open-minded and you're not afraid to like admit your mistakes and also like correct them as needed, then that could kind of help with the transition. And it can be hard for jobs because unpaid internships, honestly, like no offense if you have an unpaid internship, I'm sure you work your ass off to get it and it's tough, but it's a whole nother ball game to try to get something paid. It's just so competitive. Like I definitely see more unpaid internships posted than I do paid jobs sometimes, which really sucks. So it can be hard to land the first paid job at least. Brandon, your lectures and labs are mostly on campus and you're scared. I hope your campus has some like social distancing protocols in place and people are wearing masks and staying safe. Fingers crossed. Sarah asking about the Green New Deal document. Yeah, I wish I could say more about what my thoughts are about it, but I honestly have not really gone through it in detail, so I won't say too much about it. It is something I probably should inform myself on, but I feel like there's like 1,000 things I need to inform myself on with the upcoming election, so I could share it with you guys, but it's on the list. Is there any good colleges you recommend near you? I live in Vancouver. Oh, I didn't know you lived in Vancouver. Tuna fish. UBC. UBC is a great environmental school. So I think UVic is good too. University of Victoria on the island, but UBC is like pretty well known for being great for environmental science. So I would check them out. What's your favorite animal? Well, it changes, but my favorite marine animal is an orca, and my favorite terrestrial animal is, today I'm feeling like mountain lion. Okay, I'm going to answer another one from the community tab. What are the most important things to consider before choosing to pursue a career in wildlife biology or similar field? That's a really good question. And I know a lot of you guys on the chat are in the same situation where you're like, maybe not 100% sure. No one's 100% sure. I'm still not 100% sure. And I'm in this field, but thinking about if it's a good choice for you. And I think for wildlife biology specifically, wildlife biology is so field focused, at least at the beginning. So if you want to do wildlife work, I would really recommend that you are into the field and you have flexible enough of a lifestyle to pursue that. So, you're able to maybe move for a job or take a seasonal job, some sort of flexibility to go into the field. And if you aren't, that's totally okay. Don't feel bad. A lot of people do not have the flexibility to go into the field at a moment's notice, but just like all honesty, like I wish I could be like, oh yeah, wildlife biology can accommodate all lifestyles. It should, but right now I would just recommend, like, for your own good, to try to do something like in ecology or environmental science, just like a tiny bit more broad, so that you aren't in a position where like you can't find a wildlife job, because environmental science has way more office opportunities, like in consulting and government work, has more stuff based around home, so that might be more up your alley. And yeah, I mean, there are office positions in wildlife. They're just like, wildlife's such a hard field to begin with, to get into. And then if you are like, okay, well, I only want to do office work, it like makes your pool of available jobs, especially if you're in a small city, like so low that it could make a chance that there could be a chance that you won't be able to find something. So try to think about your lifestyle, what's best for your own lifestyle. And then also I would think about trying to get some experience. And even if you're not in your degree already, you can get some experience in your area somewhat related to like environmental science. So almost every city has this. And if like your town doesn't have anything even vaguely related, there is especially right now, there's online internships where you can get some online experience. But I'm thinking, like, think really broad. Like, say you want to do wildlife work. Well, what about like an animal shelter that does like rescues animals or something like that. I know it's not wildlife, but it's like at least kind of like in that realm to let you get some experience there. And then some other ideas are like if you were working for like if you have any city parks in your area or like local county type of parks, a lot of times they will actually like hire volunteers and interns to do like trail crew work just to clean up around the area of these like natural trails, stuff like that, like really broad, can help you decide if like this is the general idea of stuff you like. And if you are miserable doing that stuff, then probably not the best field for you. um yeah, a lot of you guys want to work in the field, but you wouldn't mind doing office work. Yeah, I don't mind either. Is most of your field work away from home, or have you done any that's local? I have done some stuff that's local in previous jobs, but my job now, I don't. Almost nothing's local. Almost everything is like quite far away from home. Like I almost always have to get on a plane. I definitely have to get on a boat because I live on an island. So I definitely have to get on a boat to get to any of my field sites most of the time. Let's see what else. Questions. Are there any careers that you know that involve both art and science? So there's actually like a bunch of, I don't know if I call them new careers, but they're starting to gain traction in wildlife art type of things. So with like social media, people making a living off of social media, there's actually a lot of people who do like wildlife art or wildlife photography or wildlife videography as their full-time job. And it's a hustle for sure. But like Owl and Bear Studio on Instagram, if you want to follow her, she's one of my friends here. It's just at Owl and Bear Studio, like the animals. For her job, she like does wildlife photography and makes little pins of animals and then donates some of the proceeds to charity. So that's like a type of job where she was actually like, I've talked to her before and she said that she's been on some of my live streams. She said that like she loved art and science and thought they were totally incompatible. And I totally like admit to falling into that trap where I definitely, as like someone who's not super artistic, I've never been blessed with that skill. I think that my YouTube is the most like creative thing I do. I just always thought like, yeah, well, art and wildlife, well, how does that fit together? But she's doing it really well. So there's definitely a lot of people who make a living doing both, but it's usually like entrepreneur type work. A lot of times it can be hard to find like a permanent full-time job combining art and wildlife, but a lot of times it's like being your own boss kind of thing. Yeah, wildlife photography does sound fun. I know nothing about it. I'm not a very good photographer, but sounds like a lot of fun to me. Thank you for the $2, Brandon. That's awesome. So you ask, what's job security in your field like? That's a great question. So it totally depends on who you work for. So there's kind of like this idea that wildlife biology has like no job security. And that can be the case if you're working for like resource management companies. So I'm thinking like oil and gas, job security is awful. And if you work in like mining, forestry, job security is awful because those industries go up and down and up and down, So you got to think about like the industry you work in and whether or not it has like that up and down fluctuations. So even like temporary positions for a stable organization can be not very secure because you can get axed really quickly. But something like government is usually the job security is really pretty good with government, especially for environmental work, sort of. I mean, some environmental work can be considered non-essential and that could like lower your job security. But for some environmental work that's like restoration and cleanup, it kind of has to happen according to a lot of these like permits and laws. So that can be a really secure area to work in. And you can do wildlife work with like cleanup, such as like, helping wildlife with oil spills and stuff like that. Oil spills are always going to happen. So there's a lot of job security there. But yeah, if you want something a little bit more secure, look for government work and like, what else? Yeah, government's the most secure, to be honest. Consulting can be pretty job insecure. I got laid off in consulting because projects come and go, Yeah, science illustrators too. That's another really good suggestion for wildlife and art. Sorry, or I don't have Cash App. We don't have it in Canada, but don't worry about it. Your questions are great. Thank you. Any recommendations on ways to get experience when you're younger, like around 14? That's a really good question. And I am seriously like amazed at how many people like in their early teens are like watch my channel and you guys all getting like super involved with the Discord server. I did not know what I wanted to do when I was 14. I had no idea. So to kind of have an idea of what you want to do and be passionate about something at a young age is only going to put you like a million times ahead of everyone else. So there's like no rule that says when you're a teenager, you can't start doing things that build your future resume when you graduate. So definitely you can do like, I mean, 14's quite young for a paid job. It's probably not, I don't know if that's even legal in some places, but for volunteer work, I was 14 when I started doing some volunteer work. I started volunteering at a local hospital, which is unrelated to wildlife, but trying to look for like, even just thinking into the future, maybe when you're like 16, what kind of places around you would volunteer at. Also, so that's one aspect is like starting to build your resume now, because you can put that stuff that you're doing when you're like 14, 15, 16 on your resume for your first job once you graduate. Like that stuff is still applicable. It's still experience. So you have even more time to build your resume. And also when you're 14, you know, thinking about what you want to do for college, starting to look into like the admissions requirements, scholarships. I don't think you can apply to scholarships until maybe like you're 16 or 17. I think it's usually like junior or senior year you apply for your scholarships, but there's no harm in starting to like, you know, just plan things out ahead of time if you want to get ahead basically. Oh, and I guess the other thing I would recommend is like starting to do some reading and research now, which leads me into this question that Iris asks. What are some of your favorite environmental books? So that's a great question. I have so many favorite environmental books. I don't know if you guys have seen my Goodreads page, which is just like a reading tracking app / website, but I have an entire folder that's basically all of my science environmental books. And if you Google Christina Lynn Goodreads, I think it's the first thing that comes up if you wanted to look on there for more. But some of my favorites that I've read lately or / I'm still reading, I love the Reality Bubble by Zia Tong, I think is the author. I'm halfway through that still, but that one has been like a shining star of like, oh my God, this one's been so good. And I just ordered like 10 new environmental books, and I'm actually going to do an updated environmental book review video. I actually managed to get Penguin Books to send me some environmental books, which I'm pretty excited about. So I'm going to review a bunch of their books and do a big like wrap up environmental books review video. It's going to take me a while to read all these books, so maybe in like 4 months. So check back, and you can follow me on Goodreads in the meantime to see it a little bit sooner. Do you live in Canada? Do you have any pets except a cat? I do live in Canada, and I only have a cat as a pet. I'm just going to open my window here one sec. Oh. Okay. Ah, there's some nice wind. Get less sweaty. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ara, for your saying you're an inspiration to all of us. How about ways to get experience when you're like 23? Yeah, that's a good question too, because that was more like when I was getting experience. Was when I was like in my early 20s. So if you're already graduated from college, internships can be like pretty hard to get. Like I was saying, it can be hard when they're like wanting people who are in their junior and senior year of university. So look for biological technician jobs. I haven't talked too much about environmental tech jobs until recently, because I was thinking about it when I did my last wildlife careers ideas video, which is just my most recent video. I was thinking about like how most of us have started off as a wildlife technician, biological technician, environmental technician, whatever you want to call it, or research assistant, which is a really similar position. And then most of us, that was like our first job. So I need to be talking about that more. It's basically like the entry level version of being a wildlife biologist, because I don't know a single person who graduated, especially their bachelor's, and their first job was like wildlife biologist is the title, because generally a full biologist job is going to require like 3 years of experience, and you can fill that with internships if you just like hustled during your college and did a ton of internships. You might be able to land that, but for most of us, we didn't do that. So a lot of us go for like the biological technician jobs, and those usually require, it's almost all the requirements are the same. I always see these, and it almost always says 1 year of collecting environmental data, surveying, etc. And so that can be fulfilled with like volunteer work or an internship if you did something like that in school. Or if you didn't do anything like that in school, if you can like kind of try to make your resume look like you, I mean, not lie, but if you did labs in school, just like highlight any little bit of outdoors type of science experience you can, then you might be able to, you might be a little underqualified if you don't have a year, but you could still try at least to apply. Because those ones usually hire like really entry-level people. Okay. Oh, this has a bunch of questions. Show the cat. I don't know where he went off to. He was sleeping behind me, but he's off somewhere in the house. He might be in the office sleeping, and he'd probably meow at me and get mad. Won't technician jobs also require some experience? Yeah, usually they require about a year. I don't know if you sent that before I talked about that, but woofing is a good way to get experience. Yeah, I had never thought about that. I mean, I've thought about woofing, but I never thought about how it would apply to like a wildlife job. But that's actually like a really good idea. It's not like direct wildlife experience, but it's like field work, relevant experience. So that's a really good idea. Yeah, woofing is like, that could at least get you outside, working with the soil and learning your plants and stuff. So it's definitely something. Especially if you're starting out, it really doesn't have to be perfect. Like a lot of people think they have to get like a volunteer internship job that is like working with wildlife. And that would be amazing if you could get that. But most of the time it's like those jobs, even volunteer work is like hard to find, like hands-on contact with wildlife in a rehabilitation center. So if you can get something even just vaguely outdoorsy related, because I'm going to tell you something. When you go to your first field job interview, almost always they're going to ask you, what is your field work experience / like what is your experience working outside? Because one of the biggest things I found that weeds people out is if they've never worked outside and they're applying for like a field job in like northern Alberta. Because I mean, okay, I don't want to scare you guys, I love the field, but it's an experience. Like, especially if you're working like somewhere remote with like extreme weather conditions, it can be hard if you're like a city person and you've never been camping and suddenly you're thrown into the middle of like the jungle or something like that. So if you could even like get some experience just being outside and like, building up experiences so you can answer that question when you get it in a job interview, and like make them feel confident that they're not going to send you to the jungle and you're going to have a nervous breakdown and cry and quit on the spot, which I'm not even like making fun of people who might do that, because that's probably something I got very close to in my first job. But the more backpacking, hiking, working outside, even like woofing type of thing is just going to help you more and more. Just get used to what it's like to be working outside. Yeah, woofing is like working on a farm for sure. I wanted to do that. Like, I never done it, but I actually looked at like doing it in like Europe when I got laid off, and just like for fun, going for like 6 months or something, but I didn't end up doing it. Okay. Great questions. I'm going to grab some more from the community tab. Oh, someone asked a really good question on the community tab. They said, okay, I don't know if you guys have actually heard about this, but Trump put out an order for federal American hiring practices to prioritize skills over college degrees. So this person, Edit by G, is asking, do you think Trump's order prioritizing skills over college degrees will change the hiring landscape for wildlife biology jobs, personally, I personally think jobs will ignore this order and still hire based on degree first. What's your opinion? So that's a great question. And I actually posted about that on my Instagram because I was really surprised when I saw that. And I mean, federal jobs is everything, right? Like scientist jobs are a little different as they require, I mean, you have to have a degree to be a federal scientist most of the time, unless you have like 30 years of experience or something. So I still think they're going to require a degree. I don't think they're going to remove the requirement for a degree because that's just like irresponsible. But maybe there might be a bit of, so federal, I don't know about federal American jobs. I have never worked for the federal government in the United States, but a lot of times government jobs will have like really specific hiring practices, as in they give you like points, or like they have a rubric where they grade each of the candidates to try to make it fair, rather than it just being like, oh, I like this person the most. A lot of times they'll like have points and you add them up, and whoever gets the most points like gets the job basically. So maybe there's going to be something like that where it's like the rubric slightly shifts, so someone with more experience might get more points. But overall, like for you guys, I think it's only going to help you. I don't see that as a bad thing at all. I actually think that's a good thing. Like, I don't know. Education is totally 100% necessary to be a biologist, but experience gives you so much in our field. Like, so the more you do internships and volunteer work and these like seasonal technician jobs, the better chance you're going to have to get a government job versus like someone who maybe did a PhD but has never worked outside of academia. Maybe someone in that situation might be a little bit less prioritized, but I think a lot of you guys are doing like really applied work because I think that's just what my audience is. So I think it's going to help you guys for applying for American federal government jobs. Brandon, you're not wrong. I did not hear about the releasing 750 million mosquitoes. Why would someone do that? Oh, Noriko, that's a really good question. Do you think having a 4-wheel drive vehicle has any influence on helping you get a wildlife biology job? So if you are wanting to be an independent contractor, which means like you're a consultant that either like contracts yourself out project by project to a consulting company or to like a resource company, or for some reason you're just in a situation where you are independently using your own vehicle, your own equipment to do work, 100% like you need a 4-wheel. It made sense to buy the vehicle, and I wasn't going to do it for very long. So I wasn't going to buy a 4-wheel drive truck for like 1 year of field work. But people who are wannabe contractors for a long amount of time will invest in getting a 4-wheel drive vehicle because you almost always need one, unless your like field sites are all paved right there. Maybe you don't need it, but most wildlife biologists do. But a lot of times if you are working with a consulting company, I mean, anytime you're working as a permanent employee, I would say like 99% of the time they're going to provide one for you. So you won't need to buy one yourself. So unless you're in a specific contractor situation, you don't need to buy a 4-wheel drive. The 750 million mosquitoes are genetically modified to kill female mosquitoes that spread malaria. I guess that's good. I'm trying to think of like what extra mosquitoes would do to the ecosystem, and I can't think of anything like really detrimental at this moment. Mosquitoes are pretty like low impact. It's not like releasing a bunch of bears that are totally going to destroy a bunch of the vegetation or something like that. But that's a really good question. I can't think of any negative environmental impacts from that. That's a really good question. I'd be curious if anyone else can think of any, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure, well, no, I'm not going to say I'm sure that they did their research, because a lot of times these things happen without the research. Hello, I'm from Mexico. I want to be a wildlife biologist. I'm more into conservation. Fortunately, I have the opportunity to go to whatever university around the world. Any recommendations? From Maro Jimenez. That's a really good question. Universities are, there's definitely like universities that are better for wildlife and environmental science than others. However, when you're looking at it from the scale of the entire world, I would think about it a little I would just say don't be afraid to think about it a little bit more personal to you. Like, what country do you want to go to? What country do you want to spend 4 years in? It's usually better to do your degree where you want to work in the future. So if you want to work in Mexico, maybe do your degree like in the States or in Mexico, where it's like similar ecosystems to where you want to originally like finally end up. If you want to move to Europe, then try to get your degree like in the country you might want to move to one day. If you don't know, or you just want to travel the world and move around to countries, then I guess just do it wherever like appeals to you the most. So I would think more about like if you want to be in a cold climate, a warm climate, a Spanish speaking country, a English speaking country, and then from there look at what the best environmental options are in that country. For example, like Canada has definitely like probably more than 5 good environmental and wildlife schools. I mean, these states has so many great wildlife options. You know, New Zealand and Australia have a bunch of wildlife stuff too. Trying to think. I don't know too much about Asia and the type of opportunities in Asia, unfortunately, because I haven't really worked there. There's a lot of wildlife opportunities in Africa. South America can have some. Yeah, it's the world's your oyster. I would think about what you're most interested in going to first. Edward Abbey or Aldo Leopold? That's a great question. Edward Abbey, I would say. They're both actually quite problematic as I got older and realized, but I still will always love the Monkey Wrench Gang. It's like one of my favorite books. So, and I love Edward Abbey's. If you guys don't know, they're both environmental authors. Aldo Leopold wrote Sand County Almanac, I believe, and Edward Abbey wrote a bunch of different books. Desert Solitaire was one of them, The Monkey Wrench Gang, Hayduke Lives, a bunch of really good fictional books too about in the environment. And I love like Desert Solitaire. Edward Abbey has the most pessimistic view of people and a really unique relationship with the environment, and I just love it. It's so funny to me, his books, but I also like definitely agree with a lot of the stuff that he says. I'm just reading your guys' comments. I'd want to work in Alaska. Alaska is awesome. Oh, yeah, mosquitoes spreading disease. That's a really good point. I mean, I would think if they're putting the mosquitoes out to try to get rid of Zika and malaria and mosquito-borne diseases, I would hope that the new mosquitoes wouldn't just spread more, but I'm also not saying that that's not going to happen. Riot's asking, do you know how competitive being a wildlife veterinarian is compared to competition as a biologist? Oh, I wish I knew more about wildlife veterinary work, but I don't. I know vet school is insanely competitive. I think vet school is harder to get into than medical school in a lot of countries. So I think that's going to be your biggest thing to get over, is just like your grades really have to be perfect to get into vet school. So that's a lot harder versus biology. You need good grades, but you don't need to have like a 4.0 to do wildlife biology. Oh, that's a really good question, Valet Paz. Do employers underestimate some countries' degrees in the United States or Canada? For example, from South American universities. I was just talking about this. I am an immigrant to Canada, and I got my degree from an American university. And you would think that an American university seen by Canadian employers would be like pretty equivalent. And I guess it's seen as pretty equivalent, but I actually had a lot of struggle at the beginning because they said that my University of California degree was not up to Canadian educational standards, which, I can infinitely roll my eyes at how dumb that is to say. Of course it's up to American standards or Canadian standards. it's like objectively like a much better school than a lot of the ones in Canada. But anyway, yeah, that's totally a thing. Some employers will look down on foreign degrees, and not necessarily like from certain regions. I mean, yeah, of course, probably certain regions would be looked down more on others, but just in general, I think it's awful, and it discourages immigration, and it can be like a way of like racially discriminating against employees, in my opinion. And it's just like a form of bias that's like gross and just reduces diversity in our field. But the reality is a lot of employers do discriminate based on like what country you're coming from for your degree, which sucks. But as long as it's like accredited, I'm not sure about university accreditation, like if it's an international accreditation thing, but as long as it's like a pretty like prominent school that's accredited, it technically will still be valid here as far as counting. Like when you see an American job that says must have a 4-year bachelor's degree, if you have a foreign bachelor's degree, they're still going to count it, but they'll probably prioritize people who did their degree in the country that they're hiring in. And that's kind of why I was saying to the person from Mexico who was saying that they could go anywhere. That's why I was saying, like, maybe try to think about where you want to work in the future, and then do your degree there, because most countries that I've worked in, at least, prioritize students from that country in hiring. So you kind of got to think ahead a little bit to get your best chance of getting a job. You got me off on a tangent there. I got so annoyed when they were telling me that my foreign experience was not up to Canadian standards. Like, are you kidding me? Oh, that I could go off on that topic for a while. And I've heard so many other immigrants say the same thing about how much they struggled to find work in Canada because people just didn't take it seriously. But the reality is, when you work internationally, you learn new things. You have a different viewpoint on life. Like, you don't want to have just a bunch of like the same old like middle class white Canadians working in these like jobs, and like every one of your employees is the exact same demographic, education wise or location wise, because like no one's gonna have like unique and fresh ideas. Because I can say, oh, when I worked in Bolivia, we did it this way. When I worked in the United States, we did it this way. And that brings like new ideas to the table that other people might not have thought about. So I think employers need to value foreign experience like way more than they do. What do you think about wildlife conservation as a major, or should I study biology? Biology can be a little general. So if you're looking at general biology, you might get bogged down in a bunch of like cellular biology courses, or like microbiology, which isn't as applicable as like ecology and wildlife work. So wildlife conservation is probably a better one if you want to be a wildlife biologist. If you're not sure and you just want to do like environmental work, look for like ecology. Ecology was my degree. Ecology and environmental science are other good options, but most schools don't offer every single one of those. So just maybe try to find like the closest thing to that. What's the plan for your next video? That's I never really plan ahead. I am going to be doing a video coming soon that I've been working on about more lifestyle changes to help the environment. And I'm still brainstorming about what I want to do. I was thinking about doing like the lesser talked about stuff. So everyone talks about, go zero waste, stop using plastic bags. But like most of us know that plastic bags aren't good for the environment. Like, why would I make a video about that? But I was thinking about all the because the Reality Bubble, that book, it's all about like the hidden side of all of these like common things that we do as a society. So I was thinking about making a video that's like the top like regular household items, or like just things that everyone has in their house that are actually like really environmentally damaging, that you could have alternate versions of that you might not know about. I guess an example, a teaser of that is like kitty litter, like cat litter, is like the clay litter is mined, like strip mined to get the clay that goes into cat litter. And it's incredibly environmentally destructive, the strip mining process. And we never talk about kitty litter, but there's so many like eco-friendly options to switch to. So I want to do something like that. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the chat if you think that would be a good idea. And I want to talk about toilet paper too and the environmental impact of toilet paper. So where did that go? Someone just asked me about the GRE. I just saw it, which is the GRE is the graduate school one, right? I always get that one. Oh, I always get that confused with GED. No, GRE is the graduate school one. I didn't take it because Canadian universities do not need a GRE. So, oh. Will not knowing how to drive hurt my chances of getting a wildlife tech job? Most wildlife tech jobs require a driver's license. So if you could learn, that's going to really help your options. My friend Kayla, she's on some of my videos. She actually didn't drive. She's my age and she just got a like kind of wildlife tech type of job. And she learned how to drive just for that job. She didn't even have like a car for herself or anything, but she needed it for work. So she took driving lessons. So I was really proud of her for that. The only thing I'm scared of is going to Canada and employers saying a UK degree is not up to Canadian standards. I know. You know, the employers who say that are probably not worth working for, to be honest. Yeah, that's a great video idea, Ara. Bias in international environmental work. Any resources for doing foreign volunteer work? I've come across some sketchy sites. How would I know if that's legit? That's a great question from Alma Nunez. So there's so many sketchy ones and a lot of ones that you have to pay to volunteer, which I personally am not a fan of that. I'm fine if you want to pay your like lodging and your food, that's fair. But to pay like thousands and thousands of dollars a month to work for someone, I think is very exploitative and you probably shouldn't do that. That's not being respectful to yourself, unless it's like a total vacation and you just like happen to get some experience on the side, I guess. But if you're going there solely to help your resume, probably try to find something at least unpaid internationally. It's sad. So sorry, what was the question? Resources. Yeah, I would think about what region you want to go to. Check Texas A&M Job Board because they do have some international opportunities. And I'm trying to think of where else. Ornithology Exchange Job Board has some. There's a bunch of wildlife careers Facebook pages that post a lot of that stuff too. And as far as checking if something's sketchy, there's a few red flags. So if they advertise like have a bunch of pictures of volunteers like cuddling baby big cats or something like that, and it's just excessive and it seems like it's focused more around getting a photo op than it is actually taking care of the animals, that's a red flag. If they allow the public to come and like cuddle with the rescued wildlife, that's also a red flag. That's like anything that doesn't stand up to like best practices for animal welfare is a red flag. Yeah, expensive, like $6,000 for 4 weeks is a red flag. And then look for reviews and testimonials. So try to find like some actual real people that you can find on like Facebook or something who have actually gone through that volunteer program and try to see what they have to say about it too. So that's just to keep you safe. You don't want to end up in some sort of bad situation where anything's fake. So do your research. Can you be a teacher for us and give lessons through your streams? I don't think I'm smart enough for that. Well, having experience with different types of pets, lizards, rabbits, horses, living on a farm. I don't know where that question go. Living on a farm help with resumes. It would be definitely something that would help for like your very first job or two. If you don't have anything else, that's definitely something to advertise. Yeah, is having some experience with animals, and outdoor experience like on a farm is definitely going to help. How you incorporate that into your resume is up to you. It might not be something necessarily for your resume, but more something you've mentioned like in a cover letter. Or if you do want to put it in your resume, you can have it like in the bottom under like skills / special qualifications. What are some things we could do to be a wildlife biologist during quarantine? I actually made a video about that. It was about a month, 2 months ago. So check my channel. It's like, what's it called? It's like things to do during the quarantine. There's actually a lot of like online stuff like Zooniverse, like camera chat projects that you can do. Yeah, reading's a good one too. Okay, I'm gonna grab another question from the community tab. There's so many questions. Oh, here's a good one. As a vegan and a wildlife biologist, you care for the environment, so do you use products, shampoo, toothpaste, clothes, etc., that reflect that ideology, cruelty-free, sustainable, etc.? And do you think that should be more accessible to people? I'm from Mexico, and here it is hard and expensive to get them, from Mr. Soleno. So that's a really good question. And to be able to buy eco-friendly products is a huge privilege. Like, financially, yeah, they're usually more expensive, unfortunately. So for a lot of people, that's not possible. And when you think about how much pollution comes from like corporations polluting the environment compared to how much people contribute like individually, it is, I would think about that when you realize you can't buy these products, because yeah, it helps to do whatever you can if you have the ability to, but don't beat yourself up if you can't find eco-friendly options. But there's also a lot of DIY stuff you can do, and maybe that'll make me sound like a hippie, but like you can make deodorant from like coconut oil and arrowroot powder and stuff like that, and then you can make like a huge batch for way cheaper than like the little packaged deodorants or whatever, and then it's cruelty free. It's like, you know, zero waste, etc. So there's a lot of fun like DIY stuff you can do. It doesn't do like it's not going to change the world, but it's something, you know. And is slightly more accessible and actually better than buying all this stuff. And especially like one of the worst things you could do is decide you want to go like vegan, environmentally friendly, and like throw away all of your shampoo and like go out and buy like all this expensive like green shampoo and all that. Just like if you do want to swap over some stuff, use up the stuff you have first before you buy new stuff, and think about if you even need to buy something new, like maybe there's a reusable option that you can use, and that's gonna save you money over the long term. I'm trying to think like not to be too TMI, but like menstrual products for women, there's so many reusable options that, you know, would end up being cheaper over like a few months period. So there's some cheaper options. Even that is too much upfront for some people, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So I personally do try to do the best that I can to buy cruelty-free and sustainable stuff. But honestly, I just don't buy that much stuff, and that works like way better for me. So I just don't buy a whole lot of like beauty products. I try to keep it pretty simple. Ecosia is a good search engine, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. You're taking a course on sustainability on Coursera. Yeah, Diva Cup's a really great option. A lot of times it's better for you anyway. I know that is. Vegans are gay. You ain't wrong. I mean, there's a lot of gay vegans, so nothing wrong with that. Upcycling is a great way to reuse stuff instead of throwing them away. That's a really good point. I don't know. There's this whole like, sorry, I have a hair stuck to my lips. There's a whole like trend around like social media and environmentally friendly stuff that's like a whole bunch of like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with this, like being a wealthy white influencer. That's who you are, but there's not enough of the other side of that too, which is like everyday people who aren't wealthy, you know, showing how they help the environment in their everyday life. So for example, I saw a really good graphic. Oh, I wish I could remember the credit, but it was talking about how like Mexican culture is sustainable as like a part of the culture, and it had a picture of like those like I can't believe it's not butter tins. I don't know, like anyone from Mexico or like grew up in like a Mexican American family will know like there's always just like random like old like peanut butter jars, and it's like never filled with the product that you think it is. There's like something like beans or something, and I can't believe it's not butter containers. And that's a form of sustainability, man. Like reusing what you have. Like, and that's not as glamorous as getting a bunch of mason jars that are all matching and labeled perfectly, that have a bunch of beans like laid out in a very perfect way that you spent like $30 on. I mean, that's fine too, but like if anything, just using what you have is way more environmentally friendly, and that doesn't get enough like attention and appreciation. It's not about buying the products, and promoting buying products that are eco-friendly instead of thinking about what you already have is actually like quite a greenwashed and like capitalist way even to think about it. So anyway, sorry, that was a little bit off topic. Yeah, Nicholas Garcia, you understand that. Yeah, I love everyone who can relate to that. I was like, I swear, every time there was like, oh, it's always the sour cream containers always have beans in my house. There's always like beans in those containers. It's never sour cream. Hey, Selena. You're asking about eco anxiety. That's a really great question. I have a video, if you haven't already seen it, on eco anxiety. I mean, that actually kind of does follow from what I was just saying as far as like, oh my God, eco anxiety. I deal with it, and so many people I know deal with it. And I actually have to like create a bit of separation in my mind, and a bit of space, like to compartmentalize my environmental work, because I can't let like the grief and the anxiety over the planet bleed into my always life. So I think it's like a bit of a exercise in compartmentalization, and like trying to keep that fear and that anxiety somewhere in the corner of your brain that doesn't just invade your brain. Because if you wanted to spend your entire life worrying about the environment and finding new things that you aren't doing to save the environment, you could spend your entire day and still learn stuff new that you're doing wrong. And like, trust me, because I spent a lot of time doing that. But at some point, you just have to keep that somewhere in the back of your mind and like live in the present and try not to think about it as much as possible, because it could be just so overwhelming. And I think it's going to be a new thing where people are going to be seeking like professional counseling for eco anxiety, because it is real. And sometimes just like going zero waste doesn't do anything. Actually, sometimes doing more to help the environment actually makes you have more eco anxiety, because then you like, or like, well, I should be doing this, I should be doing this and this. But thinking about like your overall impact, I hate to say like isn't that much, because it totally is. If everyone makes these changes, it could totally reverse things. But if you forget your bag and you have to get a plastic bag, it's not you that's going to kill a million ducks, like, or birds or fish or whatever. Like there's polluters that can kill 100 ducks in one day and not even bat an eye. I'm laughing because that's like sad as hell, Well, this is not a great answer of how to not have eco anxiety. Maybe I'll stop before I go too much. Yeah, 1966 repti dude. My mom's Mexican, so I guess I am too. Yeah, I'm not a citizen, but by ancestry. Yes, Shel Bisley is great. I follow her too. Do you have anything to say about marine bio? Does that sound interesting? Job positions? Yeah, marine bio it runs pretty close to wildlife. I find it's a little bit more competitive than wildlife by a bit. Like marine biology is just such a cutthroat field, especially like working with wildlife in marine biology. So it's quite, and it also tends to have a few more people that do masters and PhDs, I would say. Like graduate work is pretty important for marine biology. I do some marine biology work, but because I do coastal ecosystems a lot, so a lot of that does involve the marine ecosystem too. Okay, I'm glad that sort of helped, Selena. Yeah, little things do make a huge difference. And, another thing to think about too is like, I think about like when I went vegan, I am just one person. There's really like only so much I can do personally. But then I started sharing that on social media, and now I have my YouTube channel. And so my sphere of influence and like something that could have just been me doing something has expanded like exponentially, because now I can tell you guys like, oh, by the way, did you know that like this product might have this impact? And so it's like, it's not just me now. It's not just me and one person. It's like all of you guys too. So like the more you share like important things we need to know, especially like around voting and inspiring people to vote and like policy changes, creates like this ripple effect. And it can be really satisfying to hear that like someone now has started bringing reusable bags because you gave them some or something like that. So it can definitely ripple out for sure. Why is wildlife biology so competitive given that it's needed? That's a great question. The reason for that is because the world does not appreciate or respect our need to do wildlife work as much as it should. Wildlife programs are underfunded most of the time, unfortunately. So that can be definitely a reason. If you don't have money, you can't hire. A lot of people think, this is some advice I've told some people is, say you want to be a polar bear biologist and you want to study the impact of a new village on polar bears. I'm just totally throwing something out there. Think about like realistically, like who's going to pay you to do that? Like, why would someone just pay you to study that? There has to be some reason. There has to be like some sort of government rule around it where you have to get a wildlife study done. Someone who really cares about the impact of polar bears, a nonprofit organization that tries to save polar bears. Like someone's got to pay your salary. And there's not a lot of people who want to pay for like wildlife work in some areas, which is really unfortunate. So that's why a lot of places like where environmental laws require wildlife work to be done before new construction or whatever is put in, can be some of the best places to find wildlife biology jobs, because they have to pay for that stuff. Like, oh, if the oil and gas companies did not need a wildlife biologist and were not forced to by law, they would not get wildlife biologists. Like that's kind of how like government policies and like capitalism works. But since they are forced to in many areas, they will hire wildlife biologists. So that creates those kinds of jobs. Okay. Is an environmental studies major beneficial for becoming a park ranger? Yeah, all the park ranger jobs I've seen usually require like a natural science degree. So environmental studies would fall under that for sure. Discorder here. Ooh, I should post the Discord link for you guys if we want to get new people in. I'm going to do that now, actually. So there is a Discord page that I have. So if you guys haven't already, sorry, I'm just pulling the link up. If you guys don't know what Discord is, it's basically like a live chat service, sort of. And I made one for the channel. Originally, it was for patrons only for my Patreon page, but I expanded it out so that some of it is for all of you guys too. Oh no, my page just completely disappeared. There it is. So anyway, sorry. I can't multitask. I just threw the Discord link into the chat here. So if you guys want to join the Discord and chat with some environmental folks, we have a bunch of different like chat pages and stuff to talk about jobs and stuff like that, then feel free to join. It's free. So okay, I'm going to go back to my community tab to see if I missed any good questions in there. Have you done any studies on habitat fragmentation? I love habitat fragmentation work. I think it's so interesting and it's so important in urban landscapes, especially, or landscapes like that are heavily logged. And that's just like studying the movement of animals between landscapes impacted by human activity. And I have done a lot of work in that actually, and I really enjoy habitat fragmentation work. So definitely that's a really good path to go down, because that experience is really useful right now. I think more and more people and governments are realizing that we need to be studying habitat fragmentation. And that's an applied ecology type of subject. And applied ecology is just super useful and great. When I say applied ecology, I mean like taking something like a science that's theoretical and applying it to the real world in managing conservation and landscapes and species. What equipment would you say is a must-have for going into the field? A lot of, sorry, I'm getting distracted by other stuff. A lot of companies will give you all the equipment you need, but you'll definitely need a good pair of hiking shoes, binoculars, a backpack, safety glasses, hard hat, vest, stuff like that. A lot of times they'll give you most of that stuff, or at least give you like some money to go towards like buying a pair of boots. And sometimes the boots need to be like steel toe and stuff like that. So wildlife biologists should get paid more and have more funding. I agree. Considering how many people are already suffering from climate change, when do you think privileged people who are more sheltered from climate change will actually care? That's such a good question. I mean, think about it. Like, I think I've thought about this a lot. And then I saw what happened with COVID. There are people, like most people know someone who's gotten COVID, and people still don't care. Like, even like the privileged sheltered people, like who could get COVID, still don't care about COVID, even though they're like being put at risk by it, which is really depressing. So I don't think everyone is going to care, like, ever. There's going to be conspiracy theories until the very end, till the end of the planet, till our climate is so altered that nothing else can happen. If that happens, there's still going to be people who don't care, don't believe in it. But we just need to have enough people care that change is going to happen. So, proportionally, we got to get like enough people to vote at least. And that's one of the biggest things is like, I think the last election was one of the lowest voting rates for young people in a long time. I think I'm getting that right. And that's really sad. So it's not even so much like, yeah, I guess there is a lot of young, privileged, sheltered people, but there's people who even know about this stuff and they still don't like do anything to change it, which is sad because sometimes it is just like a matter of voting, but there's so much working against people as well too. But yeah, no, that's a really good question. And there are already people being impacted by climate change. I saw a really good post on Instagram recently that was like seasons in the life of a migrant worker in California. And it was like these photos side by side. And it was basically showing like one of them, they were picking our produce with a fire blazing in the background, covered in, like everything was covered in smoke. Another one, they're picking our produce with masks in the middle of a pandemic. And then another one in like a heat wave. And then another one in pouring rain. And so like, there's so many vulnerable people that, I mean, migrant workers are just one part of the puzzle. People in like island communities that are already climate refugees that are being impacted right now. And there must be some sort of mental block that people just don't watch that because they just like can't absorb. I don't know why like more people don't care about that. There's a lot of reasons, but there's stuff happening now. And I don't think enough people realize that like there are climate refugees right now. And people think that's something in the future. And I don't know what the answer to that is. I do know social media, as much as I hate social media, as far as like the culture around Instagram influencers, there's also like, you cannot deny how much more people know now about things when they control the narrative. When you can follow pages that's going to tell the truth versus having to get your news from like traditional media sources, you're going to learn so much more about the things that traditional media sources don't cover. So that's been like a big thing I've been optimistic about, is like like social media people just spreading the news more. That can also be bad when it comes to fake news, but there's so much I learned about just from like Instagram and Twitter. I'm sorry to hear that, Gilbert. Yeah. Um, yeah, story of a dude who claimed that COVID was a hoax and he died from it. I've heard a few of those. Jonathan from Colombia. Hello. Can you do a meeting subscribers on Zoom meeting or Omegle? That's a good idea. I haven't thought about that. Part of why young people don't vote is because they don't feel like they have anyone to vote for. That's so true. Like, um, this is such a millennial thing to say. I think we all say that, but like, remember Barack Obama and how excited we were in 2008 to elect Barack Obama and the first Black president? How much power and inspiration and change was behind that campaign. I remember being like, okay, things are going to change now. I got so inspired to vote for him for my first time I could ever vote. And I haven't felt like that since, which is really sad. I just haven't felt, I mean, I think I felt it a bit around Bernie, but then when Bernie, I don't want to go too much into politics, but it's been like a rough ride the last 8 years. Yeah, and I haven't felt that sort of inspiration towards anyone as I have, but vote anyway, please. I know no one's great, but we need to at least like take a little step up, a big step up from where we're at right now. And when it comes to the environment, it's a matter right now of literally life and death. It's the same with healthcare. There's a lot of things that are a matter of life and death, but for the environment, like we're getting close to a point where things are going to start to spiral out of control more and more if we don't make drastic changes right now. So please consider that when you are going to vote. I'll be mailing in my ballot from Canada. You supported Bernie even though you're 14. That's awesome. In 4 years, you'll be able to vote. So you'll be able to vote on the next election. Hey, not this one this year, but yeah, in Puerto Rico, climate change is really real. The drought is stronger each year, so our plantations can't make progress. Yeah, absolutely. And you can see it visually in so many places. Oh God, that book I've been recommending this whole stream, The Reality Bubble, there was some sort of insane figure of how many like swimming pools worth of glaciers are receding every single year in Canada and in some of our glaciers all around the world. And you can see even in the last 50 years, like glaciers completely disappearing in so many areas that are more vulnerable. And the problem is I feel like, well, I don't know if this is fair to say that a lot of the decision makers aren't located in areas that are as visibly impacted by climate change, because there are definitely places in the United States and Europe that are visibly impacted by climate change. But a lot of like the extreme impacts are happening in places where people aren't necessarily looking as much. Like there's not as much of a spotlight. Could you imagine if what's happened in some of these island nations happened in New York City? Do you know how much like people would care more? But it's just out of people's mind when things are happening in the Arctic, the Antarctic, remote island nations. It's just people put it out of their mind and it's not as visible, and the decision makers aren't seeing it, and the constituency, like the majority of people not living those areas, like just ignore it, and that's not okay. Yeah, like some amazing amount of ice. I wish I could recall the figure. If I had actually I do have the book right for, oh shoot, I didn't bookmark it though. I'll try to find it. It was an insane figure of like, glaciers receding. MJ, that's a really good question. I don't want to get demonetized answering that. I think I could say, yeah, I support peaceful civil disobedience and direct action. I think that's okay to say. Um, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just reading all you guys. You have so many good responses. Yeah, I can't believe the big companies that contribute to pollution don't see the damage they're doing. Sadly, I think a lot of them do see the damage. And it's not, when money and power controls everything, it's like, it's just, that's how these companies get ahead, is higher profit margins. So when the environment impacts your profit margins, there's a huge amount of, wanting to look the other way associated with that. And I don't even think I could I don't think I could let off some of the companies that pollute, like these oil spills and stuff, and say they don't see it, because they see it. They see it and they just don't care because it's not profitable. Sarah, that's such a good point. A lot of the people in office who could help us fight climate change are being paid by fossil fuel companies. 100%. Hey, Jasmine, I just don't want to say who I work for because I kind of keep a bit of a privacy around that. So they see the damage, but ambition takes over them. Yeah, ambition, money, power, it all comes down to it. I'm just scrolling through the questions to see if there's any more I missed. Someone on my community tab asked what my favorite job that I ever had so far. And probably, I would say my favorite job has been like the wildlife rehabilitation types of jobs. Those have also been like the most underpaid jobs I've ever had. So it's not realistic really for me to do that for too long. I never got really paid much, if anything, at those jobs, but they were so fun. You got to see the animals that you were helping. It was such a it was so satisfying. I mean, it was really sad. There was a lot of really, really sad cases, but when you got to see an animal helped and re-released, there's nothing like that. Are there ways to help conserve wildlife with a humanities or social sciences degree? That's a really good question. So there are a lot of jobs that are not science jobs that help wildlife. So I made an Instagram post about it, actually. Oh, I deleted Instagram app on my phone, so I don't have it. But stuff like in the humanities, like environmental law, environmental planning, managing a conservation program, all of that can really help wildlife without specifically being a scientist. So yeah, Deepwater Horizon is such a sad movie. Oh, thanks, Brandon. I'm so stoked to hit 20K. That is so exciting. 20,000 of you guys. Amazing. Over 20,000. Yeah, it's so cool that so many people care about wildlife biology. How to make money while doing volunteer work? How do people afford the bills if they don't have a wealthy family? That's a great question. I don't know. That's why doing volunteer work is okay, there's nothing wrong with doing volunteer work, but having to do volunteer work to find a job is so problematic in our field. It shouldn't be that way, because then that just makes a bubble of a bunch of rich scientists who have family support. So volunteer work, though, you don't have to have 40 hours a week of volunteer work, because when you put your volunteer work on a resume, you generally just put that you did the job from this month to this month. You usually don't put how many hours you do a week unless they specifically ask for it. So you can do 1 hour of volunteer work a week. You can do 1 day a month of volunteer work and work another job and still put it on your resume. So when I say volunteer work, I would almost never recommend someone do full-time volunteer work unless you have no other option. That's just a lot. Yeah, unless you really want to for some reason, you definitely don't have to do full-time volunteer work. Or I guess if you're working abroad, it might be full-time volunteer. That's true. which is quite a like privileged position, but you don't have to go abroad to do volunteer work. You can do stuff in your own backyard. If you have a day off a week and you can do like an hour or two of volunteering, that's also going to give you a huge amount of benefit. So that's usually how people do it. They work another job on the side too. 22.2K. Yes. Oh, and I have another landmark that I hit today. I hit 1 million views across my entire channel. I just got an email this morning about it. 1 million views. That is insane. I can't even imagine a million people. Like, that's like just so big that it's beyond my ability to imagine a million people, let alone like watching my videos. Yeah, we've been going for an hour and a half. Oh my God. I'm actually starting to lose my voice. Maybe I'm going to wrap it up. Maybe that's a sign to wrap it up. I don't know. It's so much fun doing these live streams, especially when there's like a bunch of people in here like you guys are. Okay, I'm going to answer a few more questions. Oh, Sarah, that's a great question. Do you have any good wildlife environmental YouTube channel recommendations? So there's a bunch of different ones. For wildlife, I already recommended Future Ecologist, Wanderlust, like WONDERLUST. We've done some collabs together. He has a great channel. He's a wildlife biologist. He's in these streams sometimes. There's also, I don't know. I know there's some environmental people in the chat if you guys want to drop links to your channels. I know there's so many more. Woo! Great job. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to keep this live stream up on my channel. I haven't made a video in a week and I'm super busy right now with other like life work stuff. So I'm a little behind on my weekly videos. So I'm going to keep this one up in lieu of making a new video today. You're basically an influencer. I hate that word, but I guess that's what it means. Hey, I will be the next generation of influencer, the sustainable influencer. There needs to be more of that. I don't mind with that. I don't mind identifying with that. Steph, that's a really good point. Yeah, I fit a volunteer thing in the early AM last week before work. Felt super great about it, although I was tired later. Yeah. Oh, and another thing to add on with volunteer work, don't do something that's not fun. If you are volunteering your time for free, do something like that you don't mind not being paid for it. Like I don't know, go play with animals at a humane society or work with rehabilitated wildlife, or do a bird banding, like something really fun. Don't do some like boring, like not fun volunteer job, because trust me, there are fun ones out there. And then that's going to make you not be bitter and hate your time that you're spent volunteering. It should be fun. And the organization should appreciate you, as a volunteer too, and not try to not stick with organizations that take advantage of you. Why'd you decide to create this channel? You totally should make a sustainability channel or incorporate sustainability into yours. I just made mine because it's fun. I actually made this channel to like talk about vegan recipes. The people were saying that they were here during the vegan below zero time would know what I mean. I just made it like for fun. I really like YouTube. I love watching other people's channels, and I thought I kind of have an interesting life. I'm gonna make a channel about vegan recipes and wildlife and stuff like that. And then I actually had like a bunch of people viewing my videos. And I was like, oh, people care about it. And I realized there's like a niche around wildlife biology and like sustainable life sort of things that there's still like a lot of potential for. So I just really enjoy doing it. So I do whatever I want. Oh yeah, good other recommendations for wildlife environmental YouTubers, Adventure Ed and Stephanie Shuttler. Right, yeah, Stephanie Shuttler is such a good one. I did a podcast with her recently, like 3 weeks ago. You can see it on her website, which is fancy. So Google fancy scientist and it'll come up. She has a really great blog, and she makes content like specifically for wildlife careers too. I think that's like the majority of what she does. And she even has a book coming out about how to become a wildlife biologist. So that's probably right up a lot of your guys' alley. So definitely check out her channel and her blog and her book too. I think it's on pre-order right now. Okay, what does that mean? Can you do a face reveal? This is my face. Cool, you saw sandhill cranes. That's awesome. I miss the food videos. Yeah, I don't make too many food videos. I eat like the same thing every day in quarantine now. Wildlife inspiration or oh, cool. Banding birds. Oh, I wanted to do banding birds this year, and I feel so bad that I didn't end up doing it. But they basically were like, there was a bunch of COVID protocols in place where I actually wouldn't have even been able to band the birds. And I think I'm going to do it next year. I think I'm going to wait for the COVID to pass a bit and do the bird banding. I've never heard of Mad Ocean. Oh, Maria from Maria See and Me. Try searching that on YouTube. She's a marine biologist, but she's basically like my equivalent, but for marine biology, but probably really useful for a lot of you guys too. Besides the experience, what should a foreigner in Canada know? Um, that's a great question. I'd say like, yeah, getting the Canadian experience is good. Maybe getting some like resume help if you're applying for jobs so that the resume is structured in a Canadian way. Canadian/American, like CVs in a lot of other countries are often really different. Like some countries include like photos and stuff. We don't do that here. Um, yeah, I don't, that's a really big question. Canada is generally like, I would say, better than a lot of places for being a new immigrant. There are services available, and it's obviously a lot harder for people who do not speak English. I think I had it probably the easiest out of any immigrant because I don't even have an accent that's discernibly not Canadian. And like no one knows that I'm like a Canadian passing person. If I made that term up. So it's a little bit different. It's totally different for me. There's a lot of people who come to Canada not speaking any English, but there are services available for new immigrants. I used to volunteer at one. It was a Calgary Catholic Immigration Society that actually help you get accustomed to Canadian culture, Canadian society, and how you do it. And actually, it pairs you up with Canadians. And so you actually get to meet like some Canadians and do some networking and stuff like that. So if you do come to Canada, like check out some of the immigration societies and immigration services. They also do like a bunch of free English lessons, which is amazing. I'm assuming they probably do them online now. So there is services that are free for immigrants that you can get involved in that will help you kind of get accustomed to Canadian life. Oh, Greg's Wildlife, of course. Yeah. I knew I was forgetting a bunch of good ones. Check out Greg's Wildlife too. That's the name of the channel if you search it on YouTube. He does a lot of really good, like, he did the species race with a bunch of us on the Discord server too. Had a really great species race video. Would you say consulting would be the way to go for remote work in another country while being paid US dollars? Environmental consulting you probably could do, but wildlife stuff is harder because a lot of the times it won't be remote. It can be quite hard to get wildlife remote work. But totally, if you could do that, do it. Go to Costa Rica and get paid US dollars, or like go to Thailand or somewhere like cheap and, you know, just like travel or whatever if you can land that. I do know someone who did technical writing remote, and he lived in Taiwan and worked remotely for like American companies and got paid US dollars, I think. So he just like, he had a master's degree and he just edited scientific papers and did like technical writing for like articles, scientific articles and stuff like that. So that might be something to think about, because if you can afford to live relatively cheap, you might not even need to have like a 9 to 5 traditional remote job. You might be able to get away with freelancing if you live cheap. Okay, I'm gonna probably start wrapping this up. Maybe I'll do one more question. Okay, I'm just looking at the last few questions that you guys sent in. Okay, I lied. I'm gonna do a few more because one's a really easy oh no, okay, no, sorry, that's not an easy question. I could go on that one. What kind of grad programs could I do for wildlife? I'll answer that one. So grad programs, they're basically I'm not super familiar with how it works worldwide, but you usually, and I'm also didn't go to grad school, so I'm not the best person to answer this question, but usually you can find wildlife like labs. So professors have like labs of graduate students, and they're all doing research that falls under like some general umbrella. So like conservation biology lab, and so you will be teamed up with that professor who's called your PI, principal investigator, and you usually actually apply to grad school to work with that person specifically, and they have to accept you and let you into their lab along with the university admissions to your master's program. So that's generally how it goes. You have to take like the GRE sometimes and stuff like that too, but you can do, it's not even so much like the name of the program you do that's really important. It's like the research you do if it's a thesis-based master's degree. So if you do like an ecology, I don't know, say the program's like an ecology program, but you can do your research on so many different things. That's what's really important, I think, for grad school. Let her breathe. Yeah, I mean, $15 an hour, I'm sure like if you have some experience, you could definitely like hustle for that online. I think that's possible. Okay. Oh, okay, there's so many good ones. Oh. Okay, I can't stop reading these. I just want to answer one more because I just think this question's so good. I'm a Mexican American in my junior year of university. What jobs can I do to work with younger minorities and inspire them to be future scientists and nature lovers? So there's a bunch of, not a bunch, but there's like, if you're in an area that has a large Mexican American population specifically, there are actually like, and you're bilingual, there are programs that are working with like local youth and community members that you can volunteer with, and they're always looking for like new people from that community who are bilingual to work with those kids. Like I see postings for them all around California, and if you can find like one of those nonprofit organizations, that is a really good place to go because they already have like schools that they work with and stuff like that, and they always need more people who are basically like in this field or interested in this field to help work with kids and like go to elementary schools or take kids out on nature trips and stuff like that. Because if you think about like, I don't know, when you guys were growing up, like if you had the chance to go to like a nature preserve and see wildlife, and you know, someone who came from your community was teaching you about it and like inspiring you, that is huge. That's the difference of people like pursuing this degree and not, or this field and deciding to do it or not even knowing about it. Like it makes a huge difference to have representation. So that's so important. Okay, that's a really good answer. Or that's a really good answer to end on, I should say. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming along to the live stream and celebrating hitting 20,000 subscribers, 20,000 plus. I'm like smiling because I love doing this. And even though I'm losing my voice, I'm like actually losing my voice. I'm gonna drink a bunch of water. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.